Hello and welcome to Economy and Markets TV, the show that has conversations with a purpose. I'm your host, Dave Oakenquist, the senior research analyst here at Dent. And of course, joining me each and every week is the editor of Boom and Bust, Mr. Rodney Johnson. Rodney, good morning.
Morning, Dave.
Rodney, great to talk to you as always. A bit of a quiet week, and of course, there's something big going on next week, which I think everyone is basically checked out of life on, and all focused on that event. I'm just teasing that, if no one knows that next week is Christmas. So we're going to try to keep things short, and I also apologize. Last week we went about 20 minutes, which I think was our all-time record. So we will keep things moving along. And of course, we try to keep each topic in under 2 minutes or less, with enforced by that. Well, Ronnie, let's get to something we talked about last week, which now has been inked, apparently, which is the U.S.-China trade deal, Phase 1 agreement. We got a couple of highlights here I just want to read through before I hand it off to you. Just to see, the U.S. will reduce tariffs on $120 billion worth of goods, going from 15% to 7.5%, but they will keep tariffs at 25% on the remainder of the $250 billion some odd of Chinese goods coming in. On the other hand, for China, for their part, they have agreed to buy $200 billion worth of U.S. goods over 2 years. And just as a frame of reference, just to check, they import about $2 trillion per year. So that $200 billion doesn't seem impossible, at least mathematically. The other thing there is the U.S. got some concessions on IP protection. So what are your thoughts on this agreement, Rodney?
I don't know that it's been signed. They're still trying to find the place and time to do this big signing ceremony. But it's been agreed to. As we've been talking about now for a year and a half, it's great that we're kind of moving that direction. I don't know about the IP protections. That's the thing I'm really hooked by, because anybody can numerically say, oh, well, this level of sales, that level of tariff. But IP protection is, what happens in the Chinese courts. And so I need to see that unfold over time. The takeaway for investors is it doesn't change the investment front very much, because it doesn't do anything to generate new demand. That extra 200 billion in Chinese spending, okay, it'll happen, but it's not going to move the needle of what was there. It replaces some of what we lost. And so it just doesn't mean that you're going to see international companies sell a lot more stuff. You're not going to see importers get a lot more stuff. So don't expect this to be some sort of big rally push. As I've said from the beginning, this is one of those things where you buy the rumor of the deal, you sell the news.
Just in terms of concessions and as far as, win-losses go, it doesn't seem like the U.S. really gave up a whole lot. They just backed off on something, a percentage of trade that wasn't there before. It's not like we gave up all the tariffs or anything like that in exchange for just maybe a pilot to see if China will actually come through and buy something. So I think I like the positioning there, at least from a U.S. perspective. I think was well done.
Right, and it showed that we would do it. Right? I mean, for all of his blustering and the crazy things President Trump says on many different platforms, it showed that the United States would stand up and go, no, we're not going to do this. And we're willing to take and give some pain to get things to move our direction. I think it's pretty good.
Absolutely. Speaking of crazy things the president has said, the things he has said, specifically a phone call, led to, in part, his impeachment in the House of Representatives. And now we're not sure what's happening. The House voted to impeach, but now there's really the most interesting thing of this is the House is suggesting that maybe they'll hold back the articles of impeachment and apparently holding impeachment hostage until they can get a better terms for the trial in the Senate. What do you make of this, Rodney?
What I've thought from the beginning, it's a farce in as much as whether you think that, he should be impeached or not, everyone had their view pretty much right after the phone call transcript was released. A couple of more details, but not much. And so we've been in this limbo held hostage by Congress for weeks where we just want them to get on with it and be done because it's a foregone conclusion. Everyone expected the House to vote for impeachment. They did. Several congressmen came into their office in 2018 saying, I'm here to impeach President Trump, so it's pretty obvious. And the Republicans in the Senate have said, not a chance. And so for the rest of us, it's a movie that nobody wants a ticket to. Just play the movie, be done, let's get to the end and move on. And the fact that Pelosi's doing this, I understand why. I mean, politically, it makes sense for her to try and, have some sway over this. But in terms of what it means for the nation, really, let's just get on to the next thing.
Could you see the House can just continuing to roll out and vote on articles of impeachment that I mean, they've done two. Can we see four or five, just pile them all up?
We could, but it would be weirdly antithetical because they would have to say that they didn't do it the first time for some reason. It would mean that they would have to hold more inquiries, have more testimony, all sorts of other things that would just suck up a bunch of time. They're losing political capital here. And so that's what I think everyone in this situation wants, is the political capital. Right now, Nancy Pelosi pulled a little bit back, but the longer it takes for this to unfold, that fades away again. And so Trump and Mitch McConnell are going to say, wow, they're so scared of this process, they won't even move forward. And Mitch McConnell has that, it's not really a nuclear option, but he's got that card to play of say, look, I'm just going to put in force the bipartisan rules from the 1999 impeachment of Clinton because they were voted on 100-0. So clearly that works if we can't agree today. And if the Democrats say no, makes them look pretty silly. So we'll see.
Just going to ding myself, just add on one more thing. It doesn't seem like McConnell is budging on the demands from the Democrats and the Senate side. So is this the escape hatch for the Democrats? Maybe so that way it doesn't get obliterated in the Senate. They could say, look, we tried and they're not fair. And maybe that's how they can turn it around.
We're now speculating in a different realm here, of course. I don't see that as an escape hatch, because if they don't move it forward, then they haven't completed what they set out to do. Mm-hmm. And so it's as if they got the football down to the half-yard mark and then said, you know what, we're just going to call a perpetual timeout. and it doesn't work, right? Because they have not fully impeached. To impeach, you have to complete the process, which is the handoff to the Senate. I mean, the vote is certainly the thing. They voted to impeach, but the handoff must occur, and then the Senate does whatever they do. And so, Trump can rightly say that the impeachment has not been completed yet because they're fearful of what will happen in the Senate, and that just doesn't seem to play well.
Absolutely. Rodney, let's get back to economics. We had some reports on housing this week. Housing starts were up 3.2% in November, while permits, as you know, Rodney, hit a 12-year high. We also had existing home sales falling 1.7% in November, but still up nearly 3% for the year. And as you note, the big one in the market is existing home sales, which is about 90% of all the market. So what goes on there has outsized influence on housing. That's the one you want to pay attention to. What did you make of these two reports?
I'm happy to see the new home or the housing starts increase, right? We need more supply. The reason that existing home sales appear to be declining in number is because we don't have enough homes out there for sale. Supply is contracting. The median home sale price was up several percentage points over last year. It's up to $270,000 about. And so if prices are going up while sales are coming down, that's telling you what we've seen for a long time. People want to buy houses. They're just not out there. And so we do need those new homes to be built. The permits are a good trend. I just hope that the builders are building in what I would think of as entry-level or near entry-level homes, so the millennials can get on with life. They can build, families, create family formation, and we can kind of get things restarted and on track.
Absolutely. That's all I had on that. We also had industrial production, Rodney, rising 1.1%, which is a very strong number, but falling almost 1% year over year. And the thing you mentioned here is if you strip out autos, at least for the monthly report, it only grew 0.5%. So sounded like this was really the GM strike ending and then restarting production.
It is, and this kind of points to the same thing we've talked about for months now. We're in a weird place where manufacturing and business to business is kind of going flat. It's the consumer that's been driving things. And here we are, the week before Christmas, with retail sales being the big thing we're all going to talk about for the next 2-3 weeks as we try to figure out what everybody bought during the holiday season. But if you look on the business side, and this harkens back to the trade deal, it's not exciting. As a matter of fact, it's just kind of bumbling along. And so that's what gives me pause as we get into the first quarter of 2020, is we don't have this big push on the backside of business to kind of drive the economy.
And on the industrial side, any possibility that, well, it would take a little bit of time, but just thinking back to the trade war, if China is going to buy some of these things, I guess it'd be more in agricultural stuff, but just on the off chance that we could see something trickle there, but maybe not until the second quarter.
Yeah, and even then, it's not going to be big enough to really, make something huge happen. What we would need is for businesses to reinvest the extra profits they got from tax reform, which isn't happening because they don't see demand. At the end of the day, demand pulls through the system. Businesses, they build stuff to satisfy demand. And if the demand isn't there, they're not going to go build the infrastructure to build the products and services. And so that's where we are. And that's why GDP growth is expected to be right around 2% again for the fourth quarter.
Absolutely. That's all the news from this week. Looking ahead to next week in terms of economic reports, we're going to get new home sales, durable goods orders, and on the worldwide side, we're going to have Christmas. Our offices will be closed on Tuesday and Wednesday. In case you wanted to get a hold of us, we will be with family, and I'm sure you will be as well. Rodney, any thoughts leading into what we might see economically, but also just a week ahead? If you have any thoughts to all those people watching.
Oh, frankly, I think there's 6 people watching this week because here we are the Friday before Christmas, right? I think what's going on, having worked on Wall Street for years myself earlier in my career, by this time in the year, anybody who's anybody is long since gone. They've set their positions. They've walked out the door. You may get some weird volatility that goes on because there aren't that many people around in terms of senior traders. You certainly might get some as you get window dressing, as we get not next week, but the week after into the year end, as people kind of reposition to make their portfolios look a certain way and to protect profits after such an incredible year. But this is autopilot. At this point, we're on autopilot. And all we can do is wish everybody a very Merry Christmas.
Absolutely. We are here and we will be here next week, right, as Rodney shows us all of his presents and everything. So we will go through all of that.
I'm still looking for the Airstream. I don't think I'm going to get it, but I'm still looking for the Airstream.
Well, your wife hasn't figured out how to wrap that one yet. I think that's the issue.
I could help her with that. There's a garage she could put it in and just put a bow on the garage, but she hasn't asked. So
perfect. If you have a question for me or Rodney, send that to tv@economyandmarkets.com. For Rodney Johnson, I'm Dave Okenquist, and this has been Economy and Markets TV.